Hello, everybody. Hello and welcome everybody to Daryl and Boo's weekly update. Today, there's no Daryl because we had a last-minute audio issue on that end, but that's okay because Tim is here. So we've got on Tim Wagner, who is actually I don't even know what your title is these days because you're always getting promoted. Which, as we talked about this with Brian McHenry, but it's that usually happens to guests of the show. They make an appearance on here and they get promoted fairly soon after that, and so you've been on here a number of times, and you've moved on to a few different things. So, what's your latest title, Tim?
I actually think, Boo, my title has changed all 3 times I've been on the show. So my latest is I'm the senior director of sales for Volterra for North America. Very
cool. Yeah, that's awesome. And myself and Daryl, we usually come on here and kind of banter a bit first. So you're now the subject of the banter. But how was your weekend, Tim?
My weekend was great. As you know, I spent a lot of time in my shop cleaning it up, reorganizing like everyone who has a woodworking shop does. Is you're always readjusting it. So I did that, and it was like 100 degrees in Austin, Texas. So. Yeah, other than that, just ran errands, the classic, go do everything. I just come off of being sick last week, so it was recovery for me.
Yeah.
How about yourself?
Yeah, this weekend so folks who are following weekly know that I've been into mountain biking for a number of months now and have been spending most Sundays out in Whistler. And this weekend I couldn't because my oldest son, who always comes with me, my middle son misses a week or 2 here and there, but my oldest son was getting his 2nd dose of the vaccine. And I think my wife conveniently booked it on the Sunday. I'm not sure if she did that on purpose. And as a result, I was home on Sunday after taking him to get his shot. And sure enough, I was doing a bunch of house projects after that. So I think she strategically placed the appointment on Sunday there, but that's okay. I was doing some trim work upstairs, just kind of doing that faux
paneling.
Faux paneling across. It seems to be popular right now as people do the farmhouse type looks in their homes, and so I was working on that. Found out that I've got this trim that's probably 1/2 inch wide or so, and I was trying to cut it with my miter saw and got a super fine tooth blade and just kept snapping pieces. And so now I'm cutting it by hand, which I realize is actually faster for a small piece like that. And so I'm moving along fairly quickly through that, and that's been fun. I know you've been working on. Sorry.
The trick is on that is make an L fence for your miter saw.
Yeah.
And then don't cut all the way through it, and you can use that, and it'll hold the small pieces better than the miter saw by itself.
Yeah, really? Okay.
Yeah, so small pieces make a sub fence essentially.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, interesting. I should have looked into it a little bit more But the miter saw is out in the garage, and this is upstairs, so it does save me a couple trips up and down as well. So
not a step. You can wear your Fitbit, or probably now it's the Apple Watch. You track your steps.
I don't have any watches. My entire family has my entire family has smartwatches and whatnot. And folks are worried about the government surveilling them and whatnot. Like, you're literally holding this thing that knows all of your coordinates and all of your body functions on there. And I'm not being paranoid about that kind of stuff, but I don't need that amount of data at this point. Maybe I will if I was training for something and need a little bit more data for what I was doing, but I'm okay for now.
I'm with you. I'm the same way. I don't like anything knowing. My car insurance company does that. They give you a beacon, right?
Oh, really?
But then they tell you to turn on the app, and in order to use their app on your phone, you actually have to have your location services on all the time, not just while using their app. And I'm like, I refuse to do it, so I don't get the discount because I refuse to do it. You don't need to track me when I'm just riding with someone else. Like, that's weird.
Yeah, that is weird, actually. So are they monitoring things like speed then, mainly?
Yeah, that's what they're monitoring your speed, and then you get a discount if you safe driver discount. You can guess the insurance company based on that term.
Yeah.
It's an awful system if they're listening.
Yeah, I know. I think Tesla is looking at doing insurance too, right? And they know everything. I mean, the cars, they have, anytime there's a crash or anything like that, they have full data on exactly what was happening, how much of the brake pedal was depressed at the time of a collision, where you're going and whatnot. So, all that stuff is surveilled out there.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's funny. I was just talking to a construction company that makes big machines, and they were telling me the sensors they have can, like the oil, like all the normal things you would think of, but they actually have sensors for dig depth and other things they can put in the buckets, so that you could actually know exactly how far you're digging and then record it back up to a cloud and analyze it and all sorts of things. It's crazy what you can do now.
Oh yeah.
All these different systems.
Yeah, you know what? This came up last week or the last couple of weeks. We've been talking about this article, and I don't have it handy, but it was by Andreessen Horowitz and particularly Martin Casado, the founder of Nicira, talking about the cost of cloud and people really digging into how much stuff costs. CloudFront did an article, and I'll try to send that out as well. But the cost of network egress for them, where if you look at wholesale costs of bandwidth, they essentially have an 8,000% markup on network egress connectivity services, which is pretty wild. But then people start to examine, like, how much are we spending on all these little bits and things? And I also have a customer here in Vancouver in the mining industry, and that's essentially what they're doing is, whereas software companies can look at their cost of cloud and weigh that against their revenue, a mining company, they can extract points of margin based on the bucket digging a certain amount and the data that they can get off of that. And that's justified a whole project around digital transformation of digging into the earth. Pretty neat.
Yeah, it's wild. And that article is actually really good. Hopefully we can share it, because it's a really good article, and just how to look at the logic. And it's interesting because it's applied everywhere else in your life, but for some reason when people hear cloud, like, we're going all in. I love that line, by the way. I've not met a single customer who's actually met that, but it just doesn't financially make sense at the end of time, right? At first it does when you start. But the longer your company exists and the more you go, it just, steady state doesn't make sense in a lot of cases. So it'd be interesting to see where the industry goes, because I think they really hit it, and they put it in the context of market cap and market valuation of companies.
Yep. And it just rolls, at that point, it just rolls back to shareholders.
Right. What are we here for?
Yeah. Yes, it's a dog wagging its own tail or eating its own tail, or however you want to picture it. But, people want to make money, and so they move to the cloud. The cloud needs to make money, and then they have a markup. People get upset about that, but really the cloud and all these huge companies, Amazon, Microsoft, and Google, that's what your 401k is made up of, and you want the stock price of that company to go up as well. So we're in this constant circle of complaining about what's actually going to provide our retirements.
Yeah, it's a I've never thought about it with the 401k angle, but it is totally true. Yeah, it's what do you pay now versus what do you get later, and that's like the game of life, isn't it? On some level. It's interesting though, because I actually think that's why people are sort of getting on this bandwagon of distributed cloud. And, I make it really simple. I just call that anywhere there's compute, network, and storage, I should be able to do something with it. And I think that's what you're talking about when you refer to big bets, the mining companies, even Tesla, different companies overseas doing it in charging stations instead of over the air. How do I do it in a charging station? I think that world's just getting started, and it's interesting.
Yeah. This is the chart, by the way. So cost of a terabit per month, and then estimated regional cost per megabit. And they kind of point out, this is a one done by Cloudflare, a blog post by them, but they kind of point out that AWS hasn't really adjusted their prices for a number of years. So we're at an 8,000% markup on here, which is great for shareholders, which essentially is all of us. So you win in one way, you lose in another way. But I think another point to look at is probably value. Like there's a cost to everything, but what kind of value are you getting out of it? So yeah, maybe it does cost this much, but maybe for that company, being in AWS gives them some sort of differentiator. And maybe, it's not as much of a concern because they can extract the value out of it. And then, on the Volterra side of things, I think something cool there is that, okay, we can look at the value that's proposed by different organizations, different cloud providers, but maybe some of that value is in certain parts of that cloud provider. So maybe compute isn't the best value, and maybe we push compute out to the edge, but maybe we need some of the AI and ML stuff out of GCP. So we need to have connectivity there. We need to connect our application into there. So let's let them provide their value. Let's have the value for the compute and the front end services living over somewhere else, and everybody's happy because they get to balance this world.
Yeah, and that's what it all comes down to, right? Because I think the real decision, and no one says this, but I think it's how easy it is to leverage cloud services if you think of everything as a system, it's very easy to plug in additional things into that system when you go to a public cloud provider, name them. And so you choose complexity avoidance over cost, because the other cost model that none of those other things take into account, by the way, is the cost of people and the knowledge of running, and building up your knowledge and maintaining that knowledge, and, an employee all in, what they cost a company every year. And then if they leave, the retraining, that's all going into the decision too. So to be fair, that's part of it. And I think if you can make a distributed cloud system simple, the target of what F5 is doing with Volterra, that could be kind of that enabler to the next generation distributed cloud. And that's what we're hoping, right? That's what we're shooting for.
Yeah. People won't feel like they're missing out on something that's somewhere else. Yeah. Or, a great point that somebody else, a client that we had a recent conversation about Volterra with them, was that they need to go and hire good people, and that really great person that has great ideas and be a great fit for the company, they like Azure more than AWS. And so who's to say, okay, now that we can't hire this person, but they are able to contribute so much, and we'd have to refactor them to do this, or if we had an architecture that just allowed everybody to just do whatever they needed to do, worry about that stuff kind of at a lower layer, and then allow those people to contribute their ideas up at the top and give them ultimate flexibility to provide the value.
I'm a simple guy, so I call it the paint paradox. Imagine if you could only paint your interior of your house one time. Like drywall only accepted one coat of paint, and you had to choose it. Like you would never buy that house, right? Like you just wouldn't. because I don't know anyone who's ever kept their house the same color, at least in every room.
Yep.
You just recently painted your office, didn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's that same, like, people like choice and freedom of choice. And so you want to go get the best employee for ideas, not for vendors. And I know that's weird coming from, we both work at a vendor, but it's the choice that matters. And how can you flexibly adapt to your business down the road, right? Netflix was a DVD box, or actually it started as a DVD mail order.
Yep.
Then it turned into like the boxes out in front of different stores, and then it became streaming.
Yep.
Like, their whole business model changed over the years. Who says yours isn't going to?
Yep. Yeah. And they were able to move quickly. That was another thing too. Time to market, I think, is like a unmeasurable, maybe it is measurable, but that's like super important. How that person that maybe that organization hires that person that knows Azure only, and they have to get retrained. And so they take 6 months to get ramped up on AWS because they're using that. So that's 6 months that person can't contribute. And maybe a feature is released for that competes against that organization in that 6 months that person could have done had they just been able to work on whatever platform it was, or the platform that they prefer.
Yeah, it's the just-in-time economy, which is what we kind of live in, right? As you're seeing with supply shortages, everything's a just-in-time economy. So knowledge needs to be just-in-time too. And that's tough when there's so much nuance to each public cloud. We blanket them as one thing, but they're really nuanced in how they operate and function, from basic networking in Azure to networking in AWS. It's hugely different.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's a tough challenge.
Yeah. We got about 10 minutes left here, so maybe we'll head over into some riveting news that I've picked up. Here is one of them, because we were talking about Tesla. Here is Rivian. Have you been following Rivian, Tim?
I have not.
They're up to $10.5 billion raised. Not necessarily their valuation. Their previous raise was rumored to value them at $27 billion. Interesting in that they've got a funding round that has Amazon and Ford in there. So they're moving along, and this was a couple of weeks ago here. But I think a differentiator is, I think these electric truck platforms come up with differentiators, and this one is actually, I think, is kind of neat in that you can get this. So there's a cavity underneath the rear seats in the back of the in the back part of the cab there, and there's been shown a couple different uses for it, but one of the things that they made up was this outdoor kitchen, $5,000 as an option.
I saw that on Instagram actually the other day. It just randomly popped up. Someone walking. I think it was that video that's in this article that you just scrolled past right there. She was walking through, showing how it works and what's there. If you're into like camp, Class B campers, I mean, if they could figure out how to throw a bathroom into this, I think they got something on their hands.
Yeah, there's a sink there. Oh, it's got water.
Yeah, it's got a water carrying tank, an outdoor kitchen. Like, think about if you're like a trail person, hiker, or even you're mountain biking, right? Like, that's who that's targeted at, is someone like you with mountain biking. You go out for the day.
Yep.
You could hose off. You can make a little lunch, whatever, right at the trailhead.
Yeah. John Callalang is, oh, look at that. That's pretty fancy. John Callalang's got a recent overland setup. I don't know if he's talked about it on the show yet, but his pickup, he's put an overland, a tent, a raised tent on there as well. So,
well, it's like the Lightning. Boo. Have you looked at that one, the Ford F-150?
I haven't. Well, I've just seen pictures of it. I haven't seen any sort of the fancy stuff on it yet.
So it's totally geared to a contractor. Like with the shift that lays down, they do that in their other cars too, but the shifter that lays down, you have a desk, it can power tools out of the back, and then the trunk, or the frunk, I think you call it on your Tesla, right? They have a front trunk, but it's totally weather sealed, so it could be a cooler. So it's like the perfect mobile contractor vehicle, and I think that's who they targeted it at. It's actually really brilliant. You could actually power part of your house off of it.
That's funny because I have a friend who owns a small construction company, and he's got a fleet of F-150s, and he was waiting for the Cybertruck to come out because he wanted to actually switch his fleet over to electric. And he saw the Cybertruck. He's like, "That's not for me. That's not the kind of vehicle that I want my guys to be driving." But this Ford F-150, I think people just wanted an F-150 that was electric with a few bells and whistles on it. And I'm sure he's going to replace his entire fleet with just those ones. They can drive them out, and they can come back to base, charge them overnight, and then take them out the next day. And they've got all the things they need on there. And then he's reduced all of his maintenance costs and whatnot for maintaining all the gas vehicles. And then, off he goes.
Plus the power station. So think about a construction site, depending on what kind of constructions they do, right? You always have to have generators running, which is super loud, or you got to build a power trailer, right? That you're bringing to the site. So it could be, especially for rural communities. I don't know. I'm in Austin. We had that deep freeze. I say that knowing you're in Vancouver, so it's relative. Yeah. But I actually ran. So it was during the workday, and we lost power for 5-6 hours at a time. My wife and I both work from home, so I actually ran our cable modem and a Wi-Fi access point off of an extension cord running to. I have a Ram truck, and they have a 15 amp outlet in there, and it was enough to power that for like 5 hours. I left my car on in the driveway just so that we could work, and that's when I went, wow, this is brilliant. Like even if it's a small generator that you can run extension cords from.
Yeah.
You could power the important things in a disaster scenario. That's the angle I would take selling that.
That's interesting. All off of 15 amps.
Yeah, I mean, it's a cable modem and a Wi-Fi access point. Not very.
Okay. Did you have the fridge?
I didn't do the fridge on mine, but just enough to run during the day because it was during the workday. Yeah. But to that point, I mean, so take that a step further in what we're talking about with Edge. Now imagine you have this, essentially it's a portable data center because you have power. Imagine what you could do with construction apps and just all the different data you could collect locally around a site, overlaying blueprints, and save all of that connectivity. And then your truck has 5G, right? Like everybody talks about 5G as a big deal, but the signal's not great yet everywhere, of course, still rolling out, but it's subscribing to that on all these different devices. What if you could just have one device and then create a mesh Wi-Fi off of it and then have apps running locally that people could take advantage of? It's an interesting world we'll get to.
Yeah. I mean, even, people that might be, construction is one thing, maybe people doing field data collection, and maybe they're in a remote location where they can't wait to go back to the hotel to upload the data. Maybe they can actually do some of that compute just on site with their Rivian setup, probably get a mobile desk kind of set up on there and then compute right on site. And then they can go connect once they get back into the city or something like that and upload the data. Yeah,
I mean, we're seeing that in other countries, and I won't name the country because it's a little bit creepy, but streaming 4K video, if you're covering a city with cameras, not very efficient. You want to do that because you want to supposedly look for bad people, whatever. But what if you could push an edge AI out that has facial recognition for right there, and it could just alert you, and you don't have to stream that whole video back in real time, right? That allows you much more flexibility. Like I think about all the rings deployed around the world. What if Ring could push a local app so you could have a You still stream to the cloud, but have a local little bit for your own custom alerting or own custom things that you want to do.
Yeah. And it can all be automated and event driven. I was looking at reading an article about use cases for that, like having some sort of event like a file upload, and the file upload into, so going back into like not a remote use case, but say a file gets uploaded to an S3 bucket, that makes a trigger out to say, oh, there's something that we need to look. Maybe there's a video file there that we need to look at for facial recognition. Okay, spin up a few containers that are the facial recognition containers. Go grab that MP4 out of there, throw it into the container, feed the data back, delete the container, or stop the containers, so we're not constantly running those as well. But yeah, we can have that all kind of automatically happen. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's an amazing world we're getting to. It makes me feel old some days when I think of like where I came from. Like Ataris and things, or even before that, Commodore 64s, right?
Yeah, exactly. I was trying to explain that to my kids the other day, and they were like, oh, what's the oldest video? I took them to a video game store. It was like a half video game store, half old video store, and it was all classic stuff in there. And I was showing them like, oh, this is a Super Nintendo, and he's like, whoa, that's old. I'm like, no, that's a Super Nintendo, and then there's a Nintendo before that. They're like, whoa, that's super old. Look at how big those cartridges are. Okay, like hold on, like there's actually this other one over here. It kind of went from right to left, so we were like going down the aisle there, and I'm like, okay, then there's this one that was even before that, and they're like, they can't even imagine anymore, like how did we play these barbaric games that just had Pong with like a couple of sticks on either side and a ball.
Right. I actually have, I shouldn't admit this, so we saved my son's N64 from back in the day. So I actually have it hooked up to a TV here.
Nice.
Bought a converter to connect the composite to HDMI. So we play that because I'm a fan of Mario Party. I shouldn't admit this, but I am. So we'll play that occasionally just for fun.
Oh, nice. I still have my Nintendo 64. I wish I kept GoldenEye. I was a big fan of GoldenEye.
I have it. I have it, and I also have the little card that went, you could put the card to save things.
Oh, yeah.
I also have the card with our GoldenEye saved on it.
That was great. That was like good. That was like a good party. You'd have 4 controllers, get your buddies over, have some pizza, and just play GoldenEye for hours.
That or Excitebike. Did you ever play Excitebike?
Yeah. For original Nintendo?
I think it was original Nintendo, and then I think they did it on GameCube, maybe?
Probably.
Yeah. Tricky Ricky Stern. I don't know. That's what I always think of.
I think they got a newer one too, if I'm not mistaken. I'd have to check that out. We have hit 10 o'clock. So thanks for filling in as not only guest, but also co-host today, Tim. Great to have you on. And otherwise, that's all I got for everybody. We will, I'll mention to everybody as well, as August, we're in the second half, or we're coming up to the second half of summer here. So there's going to be some absences as some of us take PTO. So everybody can watch out for that. Anybody who's watching the stream anyways. All right. Thanks a lot, Tim. We'll see you next time when you get a new title again.
I'm looking forward to it now after this call today. So thanks for having me.
All right. Bye, everyone.